Good morning, friends. How are you? I haven't seen you in a long time. Hello, JJ and Cole and Addie and Weston and Kinsey and Lindley. And what about, Lily? Is she watching this story? It's almost Halloween, and we're going to read a scary story today. Check this out. I am Lori, and this is my story. Mostly ghostly, 8 spooky tales to chill your bones. And Oscar is right here too, so he might be helping me read. All right, let's get started. There's not a lot of pictures, so you have to use your imagination. The upper berth. Do you know what that is? On a big ship, the places where people sleep, that's called the berth. I have sailed across the Atlantic pretty often, like most old sailors. I have my favorite ships. The Kamachka was one of my favorites, but no longer. Nothing can make me take another voyage on her, and I'll tell you why. It was a warm morning in June when I boarded the Kamachka. The steward greeted me and took my bags. Room 105, lower berth, said I. A strange look washed over the steward's face, and it made me nervous. Well, I'll be darned, he said in a low voice, and he led the way. The room was ordinary. It had plenty of space. Sand-colored curtains half closed the empty upper berth. I had hoped to have the room to myself. Later that night, after we left the pier, I was disappointed to see that I was to have a companion. The man wasn't in the room. I knew of him only because his suitcase was in the far corner, and his umbrella and a few more things lay on the upper berth. Before I had been in bed long, he entered. He was a very tall, thin man, very pale, with sandy hair and whiskers and gray eyes. I never saw him again after that first night in room 105. Let's look and see. There. Can you see it? Room 105. Ooh. I was sleeping soundly when I was suddenly awakened by a loud noise. I guessed that my roommate must have leaped from the upper berth to the floor. I heard him fumbling with the latch on the door. Then I heard his footsteps as he raced down the hallway, leaving the door open behind him. The door swung on its hinges as the ship rolled. I got up to shut it and groped my way back to my berth in the darkness. I went to sleep again, but I had no idea how long I slept. When I awoke, it was still dark. The air felt cold and damp. The cabin had a peculiar smell, as if it had been wet with seawater. I covered myself as best as I could and dozed off again. I could hear my roommate turn over in the upper berth. I thought I heard him groan and suspected he was seasick. Do you know what that is? Sometimes when you go on a boat, when it's rocking like this, it kind of makes your tummy go like that too. I slept till early daylight. The ship was rolling heavily. Ooh, that means it was moving a lot. The gray light coming through the porthole changed with every moment. It was terribly cold. To my surprise, the porthole was open and hooked back. I got up to shut it. Then I decided to dress. The damp smell the night before had left the room. The curtains were drawn on the upper berth. My roommate was still asleep. I went up on deck. The day was warm and cloudy with an oily smell on the water. On the deck, I met the ship's doctor. "It's not much of a morning," said the doctor. "It was very cold last night," I replied, "and my stateroom was damp, too." "Damp," said the doctor. "Where's your room?" 105. To my surprise, the doctor shuddered. "What's the matter?" I asked. "Oh, nothing," he replied. "Only everyone's complained about that room for the last 3 trips. I believe there is something. Well, it's not my business to frighten passengers." "I'm not afraid of dampness," I replied. Might be something else, huh? It's not just the dampness, but never mind, the doctor said. Do you have a roommate? Yes. He bolts out in the middle of the night and leaves the door open. Look, said the doctor with a curious expression on his face. I have a good-sized cabin. Why don't you share it with me? It will be safer than sleeping in room 105. What are you talking about? I said, surprised at his offer. On the last 3 trips, the people who have slept in room 105 have gone overboard. Do you know what that means? That means they fell off the ship. He answered gravely. The news was startling. The look on the doctor's face told me he was serious. I thanked him for his offer, but told him I wanted to stay in my room. So look at this. That's a big ship, isn't it? After breakfast, I returned to my room. The curtains on the upper berth were still drawn, so I assumed my roommate was still asleep. As I left the room, the steward stopped me and told me that the captain wanted to see me. I went to the captain's cabin and I found him waiting for me. Your roommate has disappeared. We're afraid he's gone overboard. It's the 4th then, I explained. The captain seemed annoyed that I knew about the other 3. He offered me my choice of any of the officers' cabins to sleep in for the rest of the journey. I replied that I'd rather have my original room, especially now that I had it to myself. Why would he want to do that? Of course, you have a right to stay where you are, said the captain, but I wish you would leave room 105 and let me lock it up. Towards evening, I met the doctor again. He asked if I had changed my mind about staying in his room, and I said I don't. Then you will before long, said the doctor very grimly. I went to bed late that night. I couldn't help thinking of the man I shared my room with. Now drowned and dead? I pulled back the curtains on the upper berth to be certain the man was gone. As I undressed for bed, I noticed that the porthole was once again wide open. Do you know what a porthole is? This made me angry, and I went to find Robert, the steward. I dragged him back to the room, and I demanded to know why he opened the porthole. If you please, sir, explained Robert, nobody can keep this port shut at night. You can try it yourself. Look. Now, I fastened it tight, haven't I? I tried the porthole and found it perfectly tight. Robert left, and I went to bed, but I wasn't sleepy. I lay on my berth, looking at the moonlight through the porthole. I must have lain there for more than an hour. Just as I was dozing, I was roused by a blast of cold air and the spray of the sea on my face. The porthole was open and fastened back. Oh my goodness. I rose and crossed the room to close the porthole. As I examined it, I heard something moving behind me in the upper berth. I turned to look, though I could see nothing in the darkness. Very dark, isn't it? Ooh. I could see nothing in the darkness. I heard a very faint groan. Was someone here? I sprang across the room, tore the curtains of the upper berth aside, and thrust in my hands. There was someone. From behind the curtains came a gust of wind that smelled horribly of stale seawater. I gripped something that had the shape of a man's arm, but was smooth and wet and icy cold. Ooh. As I pulled, the creature sprang violently against me. It was a clammy, oozy mass, heavy and wet, but with terrible strength. I pulled myself away. In an instant, the door opened and the thing rushed out. Ooh, what was it? Oh, I'm kind of scared. I rushed after the creature, but lost it around a corner. Frightened badly, I returned to the room. The whole place smelled of stale seaweed. I examined the upper berth, expecting to find it drenched with seawater, but it was bone dry. The porthole was open again. I closed it tight and bent the brass fitting. It would be impossible to open it again. I sat there all night thinking about what had happened. The morning dawned at last. I went on deck to enjoy the fresh air and to clear my head. The captain was there. I tried to explain the night's events. I told him I had been more scared than I had ever been in my entire life. Look here, he said, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll share your room myself, and we'll see what happens. The captain's going to sleep in there? Oh, my goodness. I think we can find out between the two of us. Later that night, the captain and I went to my room. The ship's carpenter came and sealed the porthole tight. We checked the room carefully, and when we were satisfied, the captain and I locked ourselves in. He sat, they locked themselves in the room too. He sat in front of the door, and I sat on the edge of the lower berth. The first man who went overboard was a lunatic, explained the captain. His friends didn't know he was aboard. On the next trip, what are you looking at? My eyes were riveted upon the porthole. The brass bolt was beginning to turn slowly. Seeing where I was looking, the captain looked too. It moves, he gasped. Just then, my reading lantern, which was in the upper berth, went out. Oh my goodness! That's a scary story. So next time we'll read one more scary story before Halloween. And it's been great seeing you today. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.